it stops people from getting things that could save their lives.
Dr Aziza Sesay. She's an NHS GP, award-winning educator, speaker, health content creator, and the founder of Talks with Dr Sesay. Dr Sesay is changing the face and tone of modern medicine.
Certainly should not have an age limit is the use of the correct terminology when it comes to our genitals. It's vulva, it's vagina, it's penis, it's testicles. Let's not use any euphemisms. Estrogen works all over our body. It works from our head to toe. Estrogen is not just a reproductive hormone. It's a all over body hormone as well. There's so many women who are suffering in silence, so many who are unaware that they shouldn't be suffering. If your periods are so painful that you're vomiting, that you're having to spend the whole day in bed, that's not normal.
Hi there, I'm Leah, and welcome to the House of Hormones podcast. So, Dr. Aziza Sesay, thank you so much for joining us on the House of Hormones podcast. I'm so excited to have you here today.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
I want to just dig straight into it, okay? So what is the biggest hormonal myth that you are just sick and tired of hearing?
Okay, so this is a big question, but I'll say the first thing is just the understanding of estrogen is what I'd say, because whenever we think about estrogen, which is one of the female sex hormones, we produce three different hormones: estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. Yes, we also produce a little bit of the male sex hormone. It's just how amazing it is. Estrogen works all over our body. We often associate it with the reproductive function, right? Or the gynecological function, but actually it does a lot. It works from our head to toe. It works from our hair follicles to our skin, to our brain, our eyes, like all these different things. And then going down, it protects our heart. So until we reach menopause, we're protected from heart attacks because it helps to basically lower our cholesterol levels so we don't get the blockages of the blood vessels and so on and so forth. And then going down into our bones, it helps with the bone remodeling, so strengthen things. And I just think that a lot of that is missed out when we talk about estrogen, and that's why it's so important in the other side when we go through menopause, when we've lost it, and that's why we lose a lot of ourselves in that process. So that's one myth I wanted to bust. Estrogen is not just a reproductive hormone, it's a all over body hormone as well.
That's an amazing one. I'm so pleased you've started with that because it is. But why does nobody know this? Why? Like, it feels like, obviously, I've been educating myself loads over the last few years, and we've spoken before. But why does nobody know this? It feels like it's new news.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think especially with recently there's been a lot of information on menopause. I say recently, but it would have been at least for the last decade, but it's been definitely hyper popularized over the last few years. And I think it's because finally people are saying, you know what? Let's stop with the stigma, shame, and taboo around women's health. A lot of everything to do with us and our health has been stigmatized, and it's always hush hush and let's not talk about it. So of course, if you're not allowed to talk about it, why would we be raising awareness? And I also think that sadly, when it comes to education, particularly in schools, I'm a massive advocate about teaching our children young and early. Obviously, we do what's called spiral learning. I have a 7-year-old daughter and she knows about periods. She knows I get periods. She knows that she will get periods one day. She knows about her vulval anatomy, that kind of thing, where I can say even for me, when I was growing up, I didn't get that. Definitely not at her age. But I think we're getting to a point now where more of us, and like obviously this amazing podcast and platform that you have, we're saying, no, enough is enough. Education is literally power. There's so many women who are suffering in silence, so many who are unaware that they shouldn't be suffering. For instance, if we talk about periods, a lot of the narrative around periods is, it's just a plight that we have to face. If it's painful, that's fine. That's normal. That's what's expected, particularly if it runs in families. Similarly with heavy periods, that's just something we all go through. And there's so many myths and misconceptions around periods itself, around it being dirty, and if your periods are heavy or painful, that's good because you're getting rid of all the toxins. There are no toxins. We're literally just setting our lining. It's insane. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done.
You're just breaking myths left, right, and center there. I love that. You just went off on a rant. You literally just broke about 7 different myths.
I know, I'm sorry.
No, it's amazing. This is why I love you so much. So I wanted to ask you more about this actually later on, but now you've touched on it, I really want to dig into that. You talked about your daughter and you've talked about your passion about educating people young in schools. And I love this. Like, nothing thrills me more than hearing you talk on this. I love it on your Instagram,
Thank you.
YouTube chat, like everything. I just love it. One thing I want to ask, right? I have a daughter as well, okay? And I feel like I'm all for education and young, but I want to ask the questions that people will be thinking, okay, when they're listening to this. So what age is the right age? And of course, this question is, you know, how long is a piece of string? Because every child is different. But in schools, okay, like on average, let's take on average, what age is the right age? Because there's a fine line between educating and scaring, right? You're not going to tell a 4-year-old. Maybe you are, and maybe that's what's right for your family, and that's fine. None of your teachings come across scary. So how do you do that?
Oh, thank you so much.
But how do parents do that at home themselves? Okay, what would your advice be?
Yeah, I think that's such an important question. And the first thing is what you said. I think people should really tailor it to the child, their maturity, their understanding. But one thing that I would say certainly should not have an age limit is the use of the correct terminology when it comes to our genitals. It's vulva, it's vagina, it's penis, it's testicles. Let's not use any euphemisms because sadly, that is part of the reason why the shame is perpetuated. Because we're always, and I always sing this song, okay? Be prepared. I've lost my voice a little bit, but I always sing the same song. Head, shoulders, knees and toes, and vulva and vagina and clitoris. Yes, those. They're not bad words. They're not bad words. I feel like we don't use other words for any other part of our body, only for the part that we feel is taboo. And so we pass on the shame to our children, and that lingers through generations as they go into adulthood. And because of the stigma that we put into these things, we then stop them from coming forward about problems that they may have. And if they do come forward, they may not be able to articulate themselves well enough. So I'm going to say trigger warning here, but the reason I'm such a big advocate is because if, for instance, we teach our daughters to say cookie or something that is more cute, because that's something I've been told before. Oh, we shouldn't teach them the right terminology because it's not cute. Like, come on. There's a story of a young girl who was being molested by her uncle, and she really tried to tell her mom. She kept saying, he's playing with the cookie. He's playing with my cookie. He keeps touching my cookie. And when we use those sort of words, there's going to be confusion. You know what I mean? So it's so important to protect our children, to boost their confidence, and to make them able to articulate where they're getting symptoms. My daughter can confidently come to me and say, Mommy, I'm having pain in my vulva. And she can go as far as to say on my outer labia, you know, so I know exactly where she's experiencing the pain. And I know that by, you know, when she gets older, she will be able to advocate for herself and articulate herself when she sees a doctor. Similarly, there was an elderly lady who wanted to see a doctor. She delayed things because she was embarrassed. She saw a male physician, which didn't help with her embarrassment, but she explained that she was having issues down there, and sadly, clarity wasn't sought, and her anus was examined instead of her vulva, which is where she was having the issues. So it's so important that we teach them young that they'll then be able to come forward, because that's the other thing. Because of the same embarrassment, they won't come forward about problems. And I've seen this again so many times, older women, even women my age, who don't come forward about these sort of issues because they're too embarrassed, and they let it linger and they suffer for such a long time. It's really painful. I have a TEDx talk that I did about this, and so many different stories that I shared, which when you hear it, it sounds insane that we've put this on things. In terms of periods, to be honest, my daughter, like, if I forget my pad, I'd be like, can you get me my pad, or so on. So she's aware. And we don't say sanitary pads here, because when we add sanitary and menstrual hygiene, we make it out like periods are dirty. I feel like that perpetuates the problem. I just say, can you bring me my period pad? Yes. Language is so, we need to be very careful with the language that we use, because it's all ingrained in us. And then I'm sure, I don't know if you've been like this, you probably had a different upbringing, but we used to hide the fact we were on periods. I'm Muslim. I used to pretend to fast because nobody could know, should know that I was on my period. During Ramadan, which is the holy month that we fast 30 days. you are exempt from fasting if you're on your period. But I would pretend to fast because I did not want anybody to know I was on my period. I would hide period products. I'd be mortified if I had a male shop assistant see me buy period products. Obviously, I'm not like that anymore, and I don't want my daughter to be like that anymore. And when we think about it, 51% of the population will experience this at some point in their life.
It's
Why is it so taboo?
like, honestly, when you said, I don't know what I grew up in a house with 3 boys, right? So I was the only girl. And I remember, like, imagine this. And yet I know this is still happening, but it just feels bizarre in my house to do that now. But I used to hide my pads, won't say sanitary pads, my pads up my sleeve to leave my bedroom to go to my bathroom within my house, in my own house. Like,
Exactly.
isn't that
Yeah.
crazy? And it's just so interesting that you say that. And it's really interesting that you talk about Ramadan and the fasting. So this is new news to me. I only learned about it maybe a year ago. I didn't even know that. And I've lived in London for over 20 years. Like, multicultural
Yeah.
society, this is how little this is talked about, that I didn't even
Yeah.
know that you don't have to fast if you've got your period. That was new news.
Yeah.
I think the women's health conversation, social media has really helped, like, spread that conversation far. It's helped connect studies from different countries. However, there is a really bad side to it too. You know, as an educator on social media, how do you find it? Are you struggling with PMS every month? You're not alone, and you don't have to just put up with it. As women, we're told to listen to our bodies, but when it comes to PMS, it's easy to feel unheard and stuck with a one-size-fits-all solution. We just grab that hot water bottle and keep on going. That's why Love Mushrooms have created the Empower PMS range, a science-backed, nature-rooted blend of functional mushrooms, adaptogens, and essential nutrients designed to help you feel your best at every stage of your cycle. Whether you're dealing with mood swings, fatigue, bloating, or cravings, Empower PMS is here to support emotional resilience, hormonal harmony, and everyday empowerment, because you deserve more than just symptom relief. This is self-care that goes deeper. Love Mushrooms wants you to feel supported and to feel empowered. As a listener of today's episode, you can get 10% off your first order with code HOUSE10. That's code HOUSE10. So just visit lovemushrooms.co.uk and discover how you can start feeling like you again with Empower from Love Mushrooms.
Yeah, so it's a double-edged sword, isn't it? Basically, the reality is we need the awareness out there. And part of the reason I jumped onto social media as a doctor is because I just felt like there's so many myths and misconceptions. First of all, there's a lot of lack of awareness. That's one of the biggest problems. There's just not the awareness out there in general about a lot of health conditions, but it's so bad when it comes to women's health. And we've already spoken about this. And I always say the same thing. First of all, you said you didn't know, right? You don't know what you don't know, right? So if you don't know that you don't know something, why would you come forward about it? Or why would you even talk about it, and so on? Health literacy is a determinant of health. All right. It is a difference between living versus existing. This is people who are suffering with their symptoms. It is also the big difference between life and death. And it's something that is so powerful. Knowledge is power. So in terms of social media, it is a double-edged sword because you want to ensure that the education is out there. And I love that people are speaking about things a lot. But sadly, because there is so little information around these topics, it makes vulnerable people very easy to exploit, sadly. And there are loads of exploitative things that's happening online in terms of take these supplements, will make your vagina taste and smell good, or, use these feminine hygiene products and steam your vulva and vagina. And if you don't laugh, you cry, right? So I think it's really important that you have healthcare professionals there who are able to provide evidence-based, credible, scientific, accurate information. And the thing about science is things change a lot. So, you need to keep updating things. But I feel like it's so important that we are definitely in this space, educating the communities about the facts and also explaining to people, because sadly, there's a lot of myths around hormone use and the long-term effects of hormones. And the truth is, for some people, for instance, if we talk about hormonal contraceptives, it could be like the worst thing for them. They may have had the worst experience for them. I think it's important that we realize that everybody is different and it's not one size fits all. Do you know what I mean? And we shouldn't force things on people, but at the same time, we shouldn't stop people from taking things that could potentially save their lives, you know, and I've seen this a lot. And the other thing about social media is if we glamorize things or make it sound, uh, the most ludicrous things are the ones usually that go viral. But also we often talk about the negative experiences. Those are the ones that are really highlighted. There are not many people that will come forward and say, oh, you know, this was actually really great for me. For instance, if we talk about hormonal contraception, you usually hear the negative stories. And I think
Yeah.
we as a society need to feed into more of the positives, because where we push the negative narrative too much, it stops people from getting things that could save their lives.
So there has been in the area, in the sector of women's health, there has been it has been so suppressed. There has been such little education, and the ball is rolling now. And I really love that about you as well, that you are always focusing on the, look, what can we do? Like, what's going to happen next? Like, let's be positive and proactive, and let's change what we're doing, as opposed to linger and be like, oh, being done like this, that's gone. We need to move forward. And I really love that about you. It's about finding, even on social media, finding the right people, the amazing doctors like yourself. We also had Dr. Kelly Casperson on, and, you know, just really amazing doctors that are at the forefront and are seeing female patients every day. So, you know, and you guys are championing and waiting on those studies and sharing all the new research that's coming out, because we know enough research hasn't been done. So we are waiting on it daily, aren't we? We're waiting on results. And so that's what the House of Performance is about. It's about sharing and bringing the people that we trust, which are people like you.
Thank you.
I want to you spoke a lot about the equality bias within the world of women's health and hormonal healthcare. So can you talk us through what types of biases you see?
I mean, where do I even start? It's just, I mean, the first thing I'm going to say is you touched on research and the lack thereof when it comes to women's health and everything women's health. Sadly, if we look at funding towards women's health specific research, it's minimal, 1 to 2%. If we remove cancer, it's only 1 to 2%. You know, and a lot of the research, and if we think about when we started including women in research, it was only in 1993 that it became mandated, and that's in the US. I found out last year, because I've been talking about that for a while. It's like, it's crazy that was, you know, over just over 30 years ago. Insanity. Like, to me, the 90s was like 10 years ago. But it's so recent that women were not included in research up until that point as mandated, but that's only in the US, not necessarily even in the UK. And part of the reason for this is we are cyclical, right? We're constantly doing this every month. Our hormones are going up and down, and that's just normal for us. So we're quite difficult to research on, because, you know.
Wouldn't you think that would make us almost more interested to research? Like, wouldn't you think, you know, if you were going to research anything, you'd think, well, that, you know, this part of they do the same thing. And then these do like this all over the place. Let's look into that. More
no, that's obviously too difficult. That's the problem.
Too expensive, right?
And too expensive.
Money,
Yeah, but one of the biggest one, I always quote these figures because it's ludicrous whenever I think about it. And any of your listeners who haven't heard this one, but if we think about the research that's on erectile dysfunction, there is 5 times more research on erectile dysfunction that affects 19% of men, compared to the research on PMS, premenstrual syndrome, that affects 90% of women. That is the most visual bias that you can take. It's insane. 5 times more.
Do you find,
you know, we live in a man's world.
Having a daughter, do you feel, because I think as women, we're conditioned to kind of just put up with things. And so I think I've done that, and I'm a strong woman, but I feel like I've even done that. But I have a daughter, and because I have a daughter, when I hear stuff like that, that's what makes me, this is just not acceptable. So do you think, like, as a mother, this is where the fire in your belly comes from to get, to make change?
No, absolutely, 100%, 100%. Like I'd already had that because I am one of five girls. I have four sisters. I've grown up around women. I've seen the disparities that exist. I've seen the disparities that exist, particularly as a Black woman. So I was already passionate about that. But yeah, now absolutely having a daughter, I'm just like, this is not going to be her story. It cannot continue for her generation. But we all need to work together because I mean, I'm going to tell you a story. Yes, I carry around vulvas. I have a pocket vulva, a big vulva. I have all these different props and I use it to educate even my daughters. But the point is, my daughter, as soon as she knew how to talk and we taught her about the words for her genitals, she has a vulva. She saw her brother's penis, sorry. And she's like, what's that? And I was like, he has a penis. You have a vulva. He has a penis. Fine. She goes to school, and this was a few months ago, actually. And all of a sudden I heard her saying private parts. And I'm like, why are you saying private parts? What's going on? And she eventually told me that she was being scolded by her friends in schools who were telling her, don't say vulva. Vulva is a bad word. You should say private part. It's so wrong. So she was being shamed, and then she felt embarrassed. And so she started saying private parts. And it's crazy because obviously me being that educator trying to show the world that we should use the correct terminology, my own daughter is still facing that. So, I mean, we had the conversation. I had to reaffirm to her, and she gets it. But it's so hard. Peer pressure is real, right? It's so hard when everybody else around you is saying, no, 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 this is bad. And her teacher really had to also reassure her, no, they're not bad words. I love her school because they're very progressive. I'm wearing a t-shirt, which I'll talk to you about in a minute, but I wear it on school runs and they're fine about it. Like, in fact, do it, please. We need our students, we need the children to learn these terminologies. Absolutely fine. But the only way that we can change the narrative is together. And I mentioned I have a son. Also, having a son makes me so passionate because we really need more male allies. The fact of the matter is, when I looked at LinkedIn, this is last year though, I don't know what the case is this year, but I remember being dumbfounded. Though I mean, it's pretty obvious, but the top 10 highest earners in the world are men. And if they're not passionate about women's health, and if they're not aware of the disparities that exist, because this is the other thing, some people are just none the wiser. They just think everything is equal, or they at least try to convince themselves of that.
It's kind of like what you said before, and I say this a lot, you don't know what you don't know. So for men, I think, like, we're all inclusive and want to bring men into the conversation. Like I said, I have three brothers, I have a husband, I have a son, and I just think men don't feel like they know enough about it to join the conversation. If they knew that women don't know anything about it either.
Yes. Part of the problem is the education. Like, even in schools, they teach girls separately. Okay, here, this is about periods. They separate them, and then the boys learn about, I don't know, wet dreams and that kind of thing. But they don't really teach them together. And I think that is the start of why they think they shouldn't be involved in the conversation. Even I have done many work-based place talks. And the saddest thing is, majority of the times I go to these things, there's a smattering of men. I'd be lucky if there are a couple, because you see women, I think they see women's health, they're like, oh, this doesn't involve me. But actually, it really does involve you, because it will definitely impact you indirectly through one of your loved ones. I'm sure you have a sister, or at least you have a mother, or you will have a daughter one day, or nieces and so on. You're going to have a female loved one who may be impacted by these things. And you could save their lives. So for instance, if you know that bleeding after sex is not normal, you could tell your partner, look, this isn't normal. You need to go and get checked out. Maybe she wasn't aware. So these are why, like, it's so important that we absolutely have the male allies. We have the discussions, and we don't separate, especially from a young age.
I love that. You've mentioned a couple of times, like, this isn't normal, or this isn't normal. And I mean, women, like, we feel so gaslit by the word normal, right? We just don't.
Yeah, that's true.
But going back to periods, I really want to dig into this. So for people of any age having a period, What isn't normal? What should we be looking out for? Because we are so conditioned to, oh, it's just a period, right? Or that's normal.
Oh,
Normal. What isn't normal? And when should people go and see their doctor? And what should they be saying to their doctor? Are you struggling with PMS every month? You're not alone, and you don't have to just put up with it. As women, we're told to listen to our bodies, but when it comes to PMS, it's easy to feel unheard and stuck with a one-size-fits-all solution. We just grab that hot water bottle and keep on going. That's why Love Mushrooms have created the Empower PMS range, a science-backed, nature-rooted blend of functional mushrooms, adaptogens, and essential nutrients designed to help you feel your best at every stage of your cycle. Whether you're dealing with mood swings, fatigue, bloating, or cravings, Empower PMS is here to support emotional resilience, hormonal harmony, and everyday empowerment, because you deserve more than just symptom relief. This is self-care that goes deeper. Love Mushrooms wants you to feel supported and to feel empowered. As a listener of today's episode, you can get 10% off your first order with code HEISS10. That's code HEISS10. So just visit lovemushrooms.co.uk and discover how you can start feeling like you again with Empower from Love Mushrooms.
all right. Very great question. Very important question. Thank you so much. Here we go. You ready? First of all, let us obliterate those words, just a period. Oh my God, that needs to just die. I work with Wellbeing of Women. I'm an ambassador, and we run a campaign called Just a Period, because it is not just a period.
Yeah.
And the narrative around periods, there's just so many myths and misconceptions. But the first thing I'm going to say is this. If your period is stopping you from living and doing your day-to-day activity, not normal. Whether it's because of pain, the exhaustion, the bleeding, not normal. That's the first thing that you need to understand. If your period is stopping you from living, doing your day-to-day activity, stopping you from going to school or work or going to the gym, like it's so bad that you can't even do the things that you love, then that is not normal. You need to seek help for it. If your periods are so painful that you're vomiting, that you're having to spend the whole day in bed, that you're basically completely incapacitated, that's not normal. If you are having heavy periods, so a lot of people don't understand heavy. Often they say the scientific terminology of, if you bleed more than 80 mils over a period, it's like, how much is 80 mils? I don't know. I use pads. How can I visualize that? But essentially, if you are having to change your period products every hour, if you're having to double up on your period products, if you're bleeding through your clothes constantly, if you're having to put a towel on your bed because you know you're going to leak through at night, if you're passing clots as big as a 10p coin, constantly, that's not normal.
Yes.
If you're feeling completely drained, there's a condition called premenstrual dysphoric syndrome, right? PMDD. And or disorder, sorry, I said syndrome, disorder. Essentially, that happens before the periods, and it's where, because of the sensitivity, we have an overreaction to normal hormonal changes that can make people feel suicidal. In fact, I'm going to tell you this stat. Around 33% of individuals with the condition PMDD have attempted, not just thought about suicide, have attempted suicide. And when we look at the stat for the general population, it's 3%. 10 times more people are wanting to end their life because of PMDD. If your periods or your cycles are making you feel that way, that is not normal. All these things need to be looked into. Sorry, really, really quickly, red flag symptoms. If you bleed in between your period, if you're bleeding after sex, if you notice that your periods have suddenly changed, they've become heavier, please know you're normal. Know what's normal for you. If they've suddenly started to change, you're passing more clots, they're becoming more painful, please, please, please always get checked out. And then the other side, once you've stopped having periods, as in you've reached menopause, you've not bled for 12 consecutive months, then if you start bleeding, even if it's pink discharge, so on, that's not normal. Please, please, please go get checked out.
And what do you say to your doctor? And if your doctor says, oh, well, we'll keep an eye on it, what should your doctor be saying? So what if you go to your doctor, firstly, what should you say? And what should your doctor be saying back? And what should they be doing to check?
Yeah, so the first thing I would say is know you're normal and track your periods, okay? Track your cycles. What is happening? How did it start? How has it changed? what's been changing, and so on and so forth. Like, those are questions we are definitely going to ask you. So be prepared for that. I usually put all this information online, and there's so many amazing resources, Wellbeing of Women, NHS, UK, and so on. Eva Peel is really good for cancer, gynae cancer awareness. Just equip yourself with the knowledge before you go, and it's really, really, really helpful. Maybe bring someone else with you so they can help to advocate for you as well. These are just little tips that would help. Know your medications as well, what you're taking, even those that you take over the counter, because we're going to ask you about them, and they may be contributing to your symptoms. And it's worth knowing your family history. If you do, like, just find out do certain conditions like fibroids run in the family, endometriosis, adenomyosis. Often these things can run in families as well. And it might be that you're having the symptoms associated with it as well. So that's the first thing I would say. And in terms of the word normal, I know you said gaslit. And when I say know you're normal, if your periods are what I've described before, though that's your normal, it doesn't mean it's normal. And know that there's a difference between common and normal. Just because something may run in your family or all of your friends have similar symptoms, if that is not normal, it isn't, even if it's common. Does that make sense? I know I keep saying the word normal, but essentially it's a matter of, if you're suffering, just know that's not normal. Okay. And when you see your doctor and you've explained all of these things, I think it's also worth mentioning what you think might be going on. This is where I'm like, equip yourself with knowledge. So you can say, look, I'm worried I might have fibroids. It runs in my family. Can I have an ultrasound scan, or can I have this investigation? There's no harm in saying these things when you're talking to your doctors. I personally, I don't mind that. I think it's helpful because we have so many tabs open up in our head. And sometimes you saying that can trigger the, oh yeah, I didn't actually, that's important. That might be something that we need to do. Know that you can ask questions. Know that you can ask why. If, for instance, they're saying that you don't need to have certain tests, ask them why. Ask them, okay, what else can be done, and what else do I need? And remember that even when you're having the investigations done, they can give you something in the interim to help you with your symptoms. It's not, oh, let's wait and see what you have. No, actually, sometimes it's helpful to at least manage your symptoms whilst we're still investigating and figuring out what's going on. Very important. And from the other side, the doctors often, what we would do, we take your history, would likely examine you. Depending on your symptoms, we may need to do a speculum examination. This is where we use something like this. This is a medium size. It's called the speculum. It's a little tool that we use to open up the cervix. So open up the vagina so we can have a look at your cervix, have a look at your inside. They may take some swabs as well. Could it be an infection? If you're due your smear test, your cervical screening, please, please, please attend. They may do it there and then, depending on whether or not it's necessary at that point, or if you're due, or they may ask you to book an appointment with a nurse. And then we would usually do some tests, investigations. Often we do bloods. We may refer you for an ultrasound scan. We may refer you for an MRI scan. But if it's something that we think, no, this is beyond, we need specialist input, we will refer you to a gynecologist. If we think, actually, no, this needs urgent referral, if we're worried about things like gynecological cancer, you might go under the urgent pathway. Usually it's 2 weeks to see a specialist to ensure that it's not that. So that's usually what you would expect, I would say.
And I really love that advice, because I think a lot of the times we're told to don't Google things, like don't do your own research. Like that kind of was the advice for years, just speak to your GP and just listen. But what we're seeing, GPs don't have a lot of time, and you only have 10 minutes to speak. So like you then, what that would lead to is multiple appointments and multiple.
Yeah.
So if you do your research, that's really good advice there. And of course, we're going to link all of your resources that you have. You can already find some of them on our website at the House of Hormones. It links through to yours. So
I would say that just be careful where you're consuming your research or doing your research and getting your information from, because obviously you want to make sure that, yes, I do. That's why they say don't Google too much, because depending on which area you're Googling, you might go down the wrong rabbit hole. So look at things like patient.co.uk, NHS UK, Wellbeing of Women, Eva Pill I mentioned as well. They often have a lot of incredible, helpful evidence-based resources. And then look at different health content creators, often healthcare professionals. I want to quickly mention that I'm not knocking patient advocates. There are some incredible patient advocates. And there's something about sharing your story that makes people feel listened to as well as less alone. So I'm all for that as well. But just ensure that, again, whatever they're talking about, there is a lot of correct evidence and accurate information, because that they're also really important. I 100% agree with having patient advocates. And also remember that some doctors, like me, all of us are patients. We're
Yeah.
people, and we also have our own personal stories that we try and inject whilst we're giving the information we care.
So you mentioned, race and representation in hormonal healthcare earlier. How can the system do better for women of color? I've recently heard a lot of research, well, not a lot of research, but I've seen some research of women of color with perimenopause and symptoms, etc. But how does that play out for younger women of color and periods? And what can we do better to support women of color? Are you struggling with PMS every month? You're not alone, and you don't have to just put up with it. As women, we're told to listen to our bodies, but when it comes to PMS, it's easy to feel unheard and stuck with a one-size-fits-all solution. We just grab that hot water bottle and keep on going. That's why Love Mushrooms have created the Empower PMS range, a science-backed, nature-rooted blend of functional mushrooms, adaptogens, and essential nutrients designed to help you feel your best at every stage of your cycle. Whether you're dealing with mood swings, fatigue, bloating, or cravings, Empower PMS is here to support emotional resilience, hormonal harmony, and everyday empowerment, because you deserve more than just symptom relief. This is self-care that goes deeper. Love Mushrooms wants you to feel supported and to feel empowered. As a listener of today's episode, you can get 10% off your first order with code HOUSE10. That's code HOUSE10. So just visit lovemushrooms.co.uk and discover how you can start feeling like you again with Empower from Love Mushrooms.
Well, first of all, have us in the forefront, like at least make us visible. So if you notice, I carry around this vulva a lot, and there's a reason that I carry it around. It's because it's brown. Yes, it helps to destigmatize things. I get people to shout out the word vulva. It's like, just talk about it. Also, it's not a vagina, so just destigmatize that. But it's brown, and that was really important to me because I just never saw it. It was not represented. And it's such a big thing. You can't see what you can't see. You can't be what you can't see. Representation matters, right? So a brown vulva means that someone who's brown or black will see it and think, oh, wow, that actually pertains to me. And I've had that said to me so many times. We don't get the representation. And usually if you see the the common vulvas that we see, or the common representation is, a hairless, peach colored, perfectly symmetrical vulva. And if yours doesn't look like that, then you'll think that there's something wrong with you. And things like labiaplasty, which is a surgical reconstruction of the vulva, usually to make the inner labia smaller than the outer labia. Again, those sort of things are fed into that. So the first thing would be, please give the visibility, provide a representation, so that people realize that these certain conditions do pertain to them, and so they know what it can look like as well, because certain conditions look very different on black and brown skin compared to white skin. And if we're not educated about that, and we're looking for what we would expect on a white skin, we will miss things, sadly. And that's a fact. And this goes all around, and even talking about medical school education, because again, in my textbooks, it was always the same visibility. We didn't have different representation. I'm not just even talking necessarily about skin color. It's also women's representation. Like, again, if we're looking at the chest or CPR, if we talk about the dolls in CPR, they don't have breasts. They never really have breasts. So you're not learning. And then when in real life, their boobs, they're like, oh, where do I put my hand? So it's really important. Breasts, I said boobs, but it's really important that, we get the representation all around. Again, talk about the LGBTQ plus community, as well as those with disabilities, those who speak different languages. Representation is so important so that we are inclusive and we don't neglect certain groups, particularly those who are so marginalized, then they need the help more than anything. So that's the first thing. I would also say that research is so important. Research is really scarce when we talk about women's health, but as soon as we add those intersectionalities that I just mentioned, it's even worse. So we
Yeah.
need to definitely pump into it. And I'm not saying that we need to glamorize the problems in terms of the disparities that exist. And I can, you know what, if I list you the disparities that exist just for Black women in terms of the different gynecological conditions, it's really heartbreaking, and it can be really triggering for me as a Black woman. I know that these are my stats. They need to change. We need to talk about it for sure, because a lot of people aren't even aware. I don't know how many times I've spoken about the stats when it comes to pregnancy, childbirth, and the 6 weeks after childbirth. We're now 3 times more likely to die compared to white women. People are still shocked by it. So yes, we need to still say it, because it might be. So I love, there was someone who said this phrase, Prof. Bola Owolabi. She said, say something even for the millionth time, because that might be the first time for someone to hear. So
Yeah.
keep talking about these things, but let's put action on top, because sometimes it's like, okay, we've spoken about it and
I
almost glamorized and admired it. Yeah.
Because when I hear things like this, right? So yes, of course, you've got the difference between how much research is done on women to men, and then you have the, when we delve into just the women pile, how much research is done of women of this ethnicity and women of this, and I'm baffled every time I hear these things, because I'm like, the true scientists of the world, right, who really have a passion for science, surely they're looking at these cases going, but why? Because I'm like, but why? Well, I want to understand what's the difference. So why are the scientists of the world not saying, I need to find out what is the difference in these two, you know, in the anatomy of these two bodies? Like, surely even on that level, people want to know, right? That must be so frustrating for you.
It is. It's depressing. I think it's just to do with the interest in the area, and the truth is, systemic racism exists. It's real. A lot of experiments were done on Black bodies. If we talk about the Dr. Sims, he's the father of gynecology, and he experimented on Black enslaved women, you know, without any anesthesia, because there was the thought that, you know, Black women don't experience pain, or we don't feel pain the same. We have fewer nerve ending. We have thicker skin. And they would pin these enslaved women down and do all these incredible experiments, which actually nowadays they still use. Well, we still use the speculum that he created. That's the Sims speculum. We're still, it helped to advance science, but to our cost, to like my ancestors' cost. And it's really sad when you think about it, but that's the reality. And part of why I believe that there isn't much research is because of the lack of interest, and because of the fact of systemic racism. That's a fact.
But it just makes what you're doing and the education and empowerment that you are giving women, all women, and especially women of color, it just makes it all more important, and just also so inspiring. I'm just so inspired. But you know how much I love you.
Thank you so much, Leah.
All of your work and everything that you do. I think it always really resonates with me as well, just how much you care about education and in younger people. And I think that's because I have young children, so that's why it's a real link for me. Lastly,
thank you.
I know your dream is all about empowering patients and getting patients to educate themselves. What's one thing, and I think I know the answer, and I think we've already talked about it, but I want to ask, like, what is the one last tip that you're going to leave us on today of how to make change and how to empower ourselves and beyond?
What I always end all of my talks saying is the same thing. If you've learned one thing today, even if it's just one thing, I know I've rambled and I've spoken about so many different things, but if you can just take one thing that you've learned today and share it with one person, who hopefully will share it with another person, and they share with another, and we create this ripple wave of knowledge that could potentially save someone's life. I feel like that's so important. And in terms of using the correct terminology and letting that stigma and shame go, please let us be the last generation that this shame and stigma lingers. It cannot be passed on because it is literally costing lives.
You are amazing. I am in awe of all of your work and everything that you do. I think Dr. Aziza Sesay should come out with her own dictionary. I think you should new dictionary, teach us all. But you're so right in what you're saying. And listen, you know, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I'm perfect, but I've learned so much from you. And even today, I've learned more, and I will do exactly what you've just told us to do and go on that information. But there's just so much more to be done and to learn. So everyone should go and follow you, Dr. Aziza. And also, before they go and have conversations with their own doctors, they should listen to this podcast, go and check out your resources and all the other places you've mentioned, which we will link below.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so I'm wearing a t-shirt that says they are not bad words at the front, and then at the back it says vulva, vagina, and clitoris. And I basically started this campaign. It's all about empowering us all to use the correct terminology, to normalize the conversation, and potentially save lives, protect our children. This is why I started a campaign. It's non-commercial. It's all about education. We're hoping that majority of the proceeds goes towards menstrual health workshops, funding them in Sierra Leone. And we're just hoping that we can change the narrative. They're made of 100% organic cotton because we're not going to mess up the environment. All the materials that we use when we're sending them are either recycled or recyclable. But essentially, I just wanted to talk about this campaign because I feel like if we're able to walk around with t-shirts without shame that say the word vulva, vagina, and clitoris, because they're not bad words, that can help to change the narrative.
And I love that you told us earlier that you do the school run in it. I love it. And also, yes. It's a nice t-shirt. And also, who needs to think about what they're going to wear that day? So maybe we should just all do the school run in that t-shirt. Right? I love it. We will link that campaign below as well. But it's so important, and everything that you do is so important. So thank you so much for coming on and speaking to us at Hormone.
Thank you so much for having me, Leah. And thanks for everything that you do. You're incredible. I'm honestly so inspired by you too.
If you enjoyed this episode today, don't forget to like and subscribe to the House of Hormones podcast. Your support really does help us reach more people and spread the word about women's health. If you want to stay connected, follow us on our social media. And here's something really important. We're on a mission to secure more funding for women's health initiatives. Sign our government petition today and help us amplify our voices for better healthcare resources and support. Together, we can make a difference. Thank you for being part of our journey. We can't wait to see you in the next episode.